I would like to talk to you about renovating versus rebuilding. An average investor will look at a building and they will say, okay, how can I make this piece of real estate worth more than when I purchased it? If you're just looking for straight income, that's one thing, but you can also look at the income in place and say, okay, how do I improve this income stream? And typically that involves some sort of renovation or some sort of minor rebuild. This is what we're going to talk about today. Things you need to think about. First thing you need to look at is the rents. Are these rents below market? And how far below market? If you're looking at a building that is 50% below market, or it has a super high vacancy rate, but it's in a decent neighborhood, these are the buildings you're targeting to do a value play, perhaps renovate. After you've determined, okay, there's a delta here, there's some sort of rent I can improve, and you calculate what that is, and then the value is going to go up by whatever if I improve the rents, then you need to look at the building itself. We're going to look at what's called the building's useful life. That's different than functional obsolescence, which we'll talk about a little bit. The building's useful life, simplest definition I can come up with, the remaining useful life of the building. You could have wooden windows that have been there since 1930, and they've been painted and maintained, so they have lots of useful life, but they could be functionally obsolete. But that means you don't have to actually deal with them right away. You can just, if you choose, you can leave them. You can have radiators. They'll last forever. Again, functionally obsolete. But these are the things you're going to talk about or think about replacing when you're renovating the building to create more rents. So the other thing you need to talk about is what I was just mentioning, is functionally obsolete. Things like 60-year-old wooden windows. While they may have more useful life, they're not going to be what your tenants are going to be all over. They're not going to look at that and say, this is great. They're not energy efficient. They're not any of that. So, and they require a lot of maintenance. So for you, even, they're going to be a pain in the butt. So you may not want those. You're going to want to replace those. You're going to look at things like, what's my heating system? Am I using heat pumps that have air conditioning, with geothermal, or am I using a radiator, or am I using electric baseboards or forced air gas? All these things can be tweaked and played with to make the building more energy efficient. And the other thing is, what's the insulation of the building? Do I wrap it in something to increase the R value? So all of these things help you with rents. The big thing that's going to help you with rents is usually improving the hallways, doing a new kitchen, doing a new bathroom, putting new floors. That's sort of a typical buff job. But the other things are like actually expanding the life of the building, like a new roof. So all of this stuff matters, and this affects your plan. And it affects your financing as well, because when you're looking at financing, they're going to be giving you a 30-year AM. They're going to want to know that the life of the building exceeds the 30 years, and that includes the functional obsolescence of the building. These are the opportunities you have to work with to increase rent. But then you have to consider, does the zoning allow you, let's say you want to add a few units, does the zoning allow you to do this? What other factors do you need to consider when you're looking at renovating a building? Can you just get a simple zoning amendment to put a unit or expand a unit or build a garage or put a unit on top of a garage? The other thing you need to consider is, what is the highest and best use? That is what's legally permissible. It's what maximizes the value of the building. That is where you need to go with this building. So let's back up. What's the big picture here? What is the highest and best use of this property? So if you're continuing your plan, you need to do things that are legally permissible, physically possible, financially feasible, and maximize the productive use of the property. That's your highest and best use. You've got this 50% rent, you've got all these things, but you got to consider the legal environment that you're in. And rent and tenants and leases with these tenants is very, the strength of the tenants varies from location to location. In Ontario, there's a very strong, the landlord and tenant board is very pro-tenant. So you can't just simply come in and say, I'm going to kick you out, I'm renovating the building, I'm going to increase the rents. You may have to actually find your tenants new buildings, renovate, pay their rent for 2 years, or perhaps you can have a situation where you're renovating half the building, moving the tenants. So these are the things you need to think about that are not as straightforward. When you get into these plans, make sure you consult with a lot of people who have a lot of experience. Don't simply think, okay, I found this big delta, I can do all these things, it makes sense, I've got, on paper it looks good. But the actual implementation of this plan you're going to need lawyers, you're going to need to talk to tenants, you're going to need to have a lot of soft skills, and I wish you all the luck in the world in getting this done.